Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be doing a predictions and breakdown for the UFC Nashville card that is taking place this weekend, headlined by Derrick Lewis and Tallison Teixeira. We will be jumping in with the early prelim opener, Fatima Klein versus Melissa Martinez. I am going to be picking Fatima Klein for this one. She's a pretty good prospect. Her only loss has been on short notice, upper weight class against Jasmine Jasudavicius, who I would say Jasmine is like a top 5 fighter at the moment. She finished Jessica Andrade last time out. And Fatima Klein was actually able to make it to a somewhat competitive decision with her. I reckon she'll be beating Melissa Martinez because although I think Martinez is an all-right fighter, her decision-making within the fights and her fight IQ is so awful sometimes. Against Elise Reed, she literally had her leg completely toast in the third round, and then she just decided to throw no more leg kicks and hold her up against the fence, losing her the decision in that fight. And it was a very winnable fight for her. Those sorts of decision-making, it just makes it really difficult for me to pick you. And I watched a couple of her regional fights, and she was constantly doing things like that. I just think that Fatima Klein is taking her career a bit more seriously. She's a bit more skilled, and I think that her decision-making is much better. So I reckon that she'll be able to get a decision win in this one. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Mitch Ramirez versus Mike Davis. I'm going to be going with Mike Davis on this. I feel like this is the first time since 2019 he's actually fought more than once a year. So I'm not really confident he's going to make it to the fight, especially since he said he was injured in his last fight only in February against, I want to say, Fares Ziam. So I don't know if he's coming into this one 100%. He barely fights at all, and he might just be coming in for a paycheck. I really hope not. I hope he's coming in to really destroy Mitch Ramirez because I think he's the more skilled fighter. But the thing is with Mike Davis, he just never makes it to the fight. He's had more cancellations in the UFC than fights himself. And that makes it so difficult to pick Mike Davis because it's just, you just look at him and you know he's not taking his career seriously. So, and he said multiple times before that he only fights to live the life that he wants so he can like go out traveling and training and all that. So it doesn't scream I want to be champion, but I'll give him credit. He didn't look himself last time out against Fares Ziam, and he did say he was injured, and he still made it to a decision with such an up there prospects like Fares Ziam, and he was able to make it a war even whilst injured. And I think that Mike Davis, he's got a lot of like natural skill. He's a very athletic guy. He's a very good fighter. And I just think that Mitch Ramirez hasn't got like the deep tool bag or just the grit to beat him. He lost last time out against Thiago Moises, which is like a really bad loss. I know people bring up Thiago, like saying Makhachev beat Thiago Moises or saying anyone who beat Thiago Moises is a good fighter, but Thiago's not all that. So losing and then getting finished as well by leg kick TKO for Mitch Ramirez is not a good look for him. And I think that if Mike Davis is not a shell of himself, he'll be able to win this by decision or late submission. I don't think that Ramirez has the tool bag to beat Mike Davis in this fight. Moving on to the next one, we've got Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Walter Walker. I reckon I'll pick Walter Walker by decision. I don't like picking Kennedy Nzechukwu fights just because he's so hot and cold. He's looked good since he's come to heavyweight, but it was literally just last year that he lost to OSP. And I know people are talking about him like now that he's moved up, he's going to be a top 5 guy. But I still see the same Kennedy Nzechukwu who was getting finished or almost getting finished by OSP. So I just think, although he's got decent takedown defense and his striking is probably the better out of the two, and the length could give Walter some problems, I just think that Kennedy's not that good at using his range. He's not very active on the feet. He doesn't throw many punches at all. He's not the most powerful for a guy who's so massive. And I just think that he's a bit too sloppy to beat Walter Walker. I think the takedown entries that Kennedy's been able to stuff in the past aren't going to be as explosive as Walter Walker's. And I don't think that Walter's going to go out there and try and scrap with Nzechukwu. So I think that this will be like a fight that's heavily on the cage with Walter trying to get the takedown, maybe doing some knees to the body. I think that his clinch work's going to be very valuable against Nzechukwu, and I think he's probably going to win it with like 2 rounds of cage control, normal like ground control submission attempts. I think he's just going to dominate 2 of those rounds in the grappling in this fight, and I think Nzechukwu is going to show us that although he can defend some takedowns against some mid to low level opponents, I think Walter Walker is actually a decent heavyweight. I could see him even getting a submission this time out, maybe like a Kimura, but I think it'll be a 29-28 decision for Volta Walker. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Lauren Murphy versus Eduarda Mora. I'm picking Eduarda Mora in this one. I think that this fight doesn't have as much to do with the attributes of either fighter. I think in Lauren's heyday, before she turned 40 years old, she was quite skilled. But she's been out of the cage since January of 2023. Got brutalized in 2 of her last 3 fights. Her last one out was against Jessica Andrade in January of 2023. And she got beaten to the point where Andrade said that she stopped punching because it was hurting her hands really bad. She got a win before that against Miesha Tate, and then lost brutally in 2021 against Shevchenko by TKO. And there is something to be said about Eduarda Mora's opponents not being as skilled as Lauren Murphy. Like, Lauren Murphy has been fighting the Miesha Tate. She's been fighting the Valentina Shevchenkos or the Jessica Andrades. And Eduarda Mora has not been fighting that level of opponent. But I still think that being 42 years old is just not going to bode well for you in the UFC. I think that the difference is that Mora is going to be fresh. She's going to be fighting. She's been fighting actively. Her weight cut's going to be easier. Her speed and timing is going to be better. Wrestling's going to be sharper than Lauren Murphy's. And Lauren's just going to be really slow. She's 42 years old, coming off a 2.5-year layoff. So I'm picking Eduarda Mora by like a 30-27 decision. Moving on to the next fight. This is where the card starts getting pretty good. I actually really like this card. Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. I'm going to be picking Chidi Njokuani for this fight. Stylistically, this is a very difficult matchup for Jake Matthews. He's really small. He likes to work in the boxing and kicking range. He's not very powerful. And he's the size of a 145er, whereas Chidi is a huge welterweight. Used to fight at middleweight. He's 6'2" or 3. He has a much, much longer reach and leg reach to Jake Matthews. And he's got like a really long Muay Thai style. I think Jake is really going to struggle with this fight. I hate that because I'm an Aussie and I like watching the Aussies do well, but Chidi's just going to be able to use all of his weapons without having any worry in the world coming back at him. So I think Jake loves to throw the jabs with the leg kicks and isn't very committal with his punches. And at that range, Chidi's going to eat him up with leg kicks, jabs. He's going to blast him with front kicks to the body and face. And on taller opponents that we've seen Chidi fight, it causes that front kick to the body causes a lot of issues. And sometimes it causes nut shots, which doesn't work out for Chidi. But in this fight, it is going to be the perfect level. Jake Matthews is tiny, so this is going to be lined up perfectly for Jake's solar plexus. That none of these are going to be nut shots. And they're going to be really devastating shots coming down the middle. They're going to hurt Jake Matthews throughout the entire fight. Jake's got a high guard, so that front kick to the body is going to keep hitting his solar plexus. I could even see him getting finished by a body shot by Chidi. But I think it's going to make it to a decision. I don't think that Jake Matthews has that much chance in this, as he's got no pop in his shots to keep Chidi away from him. And Chidi's got that slim build and he's not got a good chin at all, I don't think. But Jake's just not got the power or the force to crack the chin. And there is a chance that he's able to use his wrestling early, get Chidi tired and win a decision, as Chidi's cardio is not nearly where Jake is. But I just think that Chidi's just going to be way too sharp in those first 2 rounds and maybe make the 3rd round close where he gets taken down. But I think that Chidi is going to be able to outstrike, outspeed, and just outland Jake Matthews in those first 2 rounds, really just making that the difference in the fight. I think there's a very good chance he finishes him by body shot TKO, but I think that Jake's a tough guy, so hopefully he can take it. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis. I'll be picking Chris Curtis this time around. I don't think that Max Griffin has got it in him anymore. I also have a feeling this fight is going to suck. We always talk about when fights are going to be fun, but this is one that I think is blaringly obvious going to be a shit fight. Max loves to move backwards perpetually, and Chris Curtis does not cut the cage off well at all. And the thing is that this will just come down to the fact that Max Griffin never sits down on a single punch in a fight, and he does not throw any volume. So Chris will be slowly able to plod him down and outland him. And then since Chris is moving down to welterweight, he'll get gassed out in the 3rd round. So we're not going to see a finish in this fight. 1 round of Curtis looking good, and then The second and third round will be Max running for his life as the Plodster is slowly cutting the cage down, 1% of the cage at a time, winning on cage control or some bullshit. Like, it's actually going to be such a terrible fight. I can literally feel it. The first round's going to be somewhat fun, and then Max Griffin's going to be sprinting full speed ahead at the opposite direction. And Chris Curtis is not going to be able to land that much, but he'll win off pressure. And it's going to be a disgusting fight, but I can really see why this is not on the main card, but I just think that they should have scrap that fight and make anything else, to be honest. I don't care who you put them up against, just not each other. Moving on to the next fight, we've got the opener of the main card. We got Junior Tafa versus Taco Tokos. Are we picking Junior Tafa in this fight? I hate picking either of these guys. They always let me down, especially after Tafa pushed his opponent when they subbed in. I thought that was weak as fuck. I thought that was gross. I never want to see that again from him. But I've seen a lot of pictures of Tafa since coming down from heavyweight. He looks like he's in fantastic shape. He looks so much better than he usually is. He looks like a professional athlete for one part of his career for once. And this fight is basically predicted off the transformation of Tafa and how I reckon even though Tafa has cut to light heavyweight, he's still going to carry some of that heavyweight power. And Taco Tokos has got the worst defense in the UFC. He's never won in the UFC. He's got some bad losses as well. And I think that Junior Tafa is going to be having a light heavyweight debut where he gets a second round KO. People are talking about how this is his proper weight class. He's going to become a title challenger and then he'll get slept out cold next fight. But moving on, we've got the fifth fight on the main card. We've got Vitor Petrino versus Austin Lane, or I think he changed his name to Dejuan Lane. I have no idea why, but I think Vitor Petrino's got this one. I think Austin Lane's an athlete. I don't know if he's really a fighter. He kind of reminds me of Trevin Giles, but Vitor has looked terrible in the UFC. He's got a terrible loss to Anthony Smith and then got KO'd bad to Dustin Jacoby. Had a few good wins before that, but not against high-level opponents. But he is a kind of skilled fighter. When he was fighting against Dustin Jacoby, he was outstriking him throughout the whole fight getting slept out cold. I could definitely see Austin Lane doing the same, but the thing is that he only KOs people on the regional scene. He loses to people in the UFC, and he can nut hug Rebellis Despain, who is a fish out of water on the ground. So I think Vitor is going to be a lot more comfortable in the ground. He will not be held down for 3 straight rounds. He's going to have the light heavyweight skill advantage. And for a heavyweight, I don't think Austin Lane, although he still has the chance to knock out the glass chin of Vitor Petrino, I don't think that Austin Lane hits that hard at all. So I think it could be a memeable matchup where Vitor gets KO'd by a guy with no KOs in the UFC, where he's become like literally the worst fighter in the UFC. But I think I can trust in Vitor Petrino's light heavyweight talent coming into this fight, and I think that he'll get a KO in the first round. Sorry, I'm literally going to die of sneezing. Pardon me in 3, 2, 1. Okay, sorry about that. Next fight, we've got Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charrier. I'm going to be going with Morgan Charrier in this one. I wish I could go with Nate the Train, but his level of skill is kind of regressing every fight. He looked awful last time out against Doo Ho Choi. Of course, Doo Ho Choi looked good, but Nate looked especially bad. He looked old in that fight too. He looked washed. So the thing is that I think if you want to beat Morgan Charrier, you got to be a slick, clean striker. He struggles against people who are faster than him and more evasive and accurate. And almost anyone that tries to brawl with Morgan Charrier gets smoked. So I think that Nate Landwehr is going to do exactly that. He comes forward without educated offense. He throws whatever he thinks will land. And that's why we love Nate the Train. But I think that Nate Landwehr is going to get hurt multiple times in the fight. I think he might be able to tough it out. I don't know if Morgan's as powerful as the great Doo Ho Choi. But I'm going to be picking Morgan Charrier versus by a dominant decision, maybe like a 30-26, where he drops Nate Landwehr multiple times. Moving on, we've got Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. I'll be picking Steve Garcia, sadly, for this fight. This is a fight that a couple of years ago I would pick Calvin Kattar to win this easily. But in his last few performances, he has looked ridiculously slow against Yusuf Zalal and Aljamain Sterling. he just looked like he was stuck in the mud the entirety of both of those fights. Like, it looks like his footwork's gotten slower. It looks like he doesn't move well with punches anymore. He just gets hit cleanly, comes forward like a zombie and tries to hit you with no like setups to his offense. So it's just, I don't see him beating Steve Garcia in this one. And momentum wise, it's just, he's been slowly dropping down. He's 1-5 in his last 6 fights with 4 losses in a row, whereas Steve Garcia is 5-1 in his last 6 fights with 4 KOs or TKOs in a row. So it's just like, momentum is all on Steve Garcia's side. If someone wants to pick the craftiness of Calvin Kattar to win him the fight, I don't necessarily hate that, but his game is too one-dimensional to shock Steve Garcia. I think Steve likes to get into brawls. I could see Calvin Kattar just like smoking him out cold in the middle of his combination, but I think that the Winkle John Jim will be understanding of what Calvin Kattar needs to do, and they'll have a good game plan to come up against it. Steve Garcia is very gritty. He likes to get into wars. He can definitely get finished in this fight, but I just look at Calvin Kattar's footwork and his knee surgeries, and I just don't think he's going to be able to catch up to Steve Garcia. I could see Steve 3-1ing him on strikes. I don't think Kattar's going to get finished, but I think this is a 30-27 decision for Steve Garcia. This is a fight, though, where you could put some live odds on. If you see Steve Garcia get tired, it would be a good time to bet on Calvin Kattar in this fight. So I'm going to be picking Steve Garcia by a 30-27 decision. Moving on, we've got Stephen Thomspon versus Gabriel Bonfim. I'm going to be picking Gabriel Bonfim in this fight. This is another one where if it was 1 year ago, I'm picking Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to absolutely smoke Gabriel Bonfim. I don't think Bonfim's all that. I just rewatched Stephen Thompson versus Buckley, though, and I just cannot pick him to win. I've seen all of Stephen Thompson's fights. I used to love watching him. He was one of my favorite fighters, and that fight has shown me his cardio is just not where it used to be, nor his speed either, especially in those later rounds. If you watch the round 3 of that fight before they even start, he looks gassed. He looks insanely tired, and I think that people understand at this point in his career that his power is really not there. And Bonfim has good time takedowns. He's clean on the feet. He's really fast. Got a good chin. He's a prolific finisher. And I just do think that he's good enough at this point in his career to beat Wonderboy. 2 years ago, Wonderboy smokes him out cold. But I think that he's good enough to beat Wonderboy and then lose to anyone else he fights next. I think his defense is sus, his cardio is sus, his fight IQ can be terrible. But at this point in his career, like, I just think at the top of the division, Stephen Thompson's just lost the speed. He's not that fast. Like, his kicks are somewhat fast, but they're not really even anymore. Like, you used to look at Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's kicks, and they would genuinely come out of nowhere, whereas now you kind of know they're coming. Like, and since he's gotten so much slower and not evolved his style, he still fights with his hands down the whole time. And back in the day, he was fast enough to evade whilst doing that, but he's not anymore, especially whilst moving backwards, especially if he can kick his legs once or twice, or force the wrestling. And I think in the first few minutes, Bonfim is going to come out hot, shoot some takedowns, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, you're going to see him breathing hard very early into this fight. He's literally like 42 or 43, and the first few minutes, he's going to still be evading with his hands all the way down. He might not get caught in the first few exchanges, but Bonfim isn't like Joaquin Buckley. He's going to throw those leg kicks. He's going to shoot the takedowns, and I think he's got as good, if not better, timing on his takedowns than Joaquin Buckley. So I think he's going to get down Stephen Wonderboy Thompson early. He's going to kick his legs early. He's going to do all these things that we've seen people do, and we've seen people talk about when fighting Wonderboy Thompson. And now that Thompson's 42, he's just not going to have the reasonable offense to come back and like beat them at their game. Like, we've seen in the past that Wonderboy's given so many people a very tough run for their money, but after each one of those fights, these fighters are coming out and saying, oh, this is what you got to do. Like Anthony Pettis saying, you got to leg kick him, you got to slow him down. Or Joaquin Buckley making him look like he's got no power in his punches. Or Bilal Muhammad just saying, there's no point in trying to strike with him, he's too fast, so just shoot. We've got all of these things that people are saying, and they're still beating Wonderboy. That Gabriel's just going to be able to look at all of that and be like, okay, I'm going to just shoot for takedowns early, throw leg kicks, and just swing wild and not give Wonderboy Thompson the space to land that front leg kick that he always does. So I can see Gabriel Bonfim just being smart, shooting a lot of takedowns, getting a lot of leg kicks off, throwing hard in the first few minutes, and getting a KO in the first round, sadly. As Wonderboy's leaning backwards, I think it'll be a right hand. It's just going to be a really not a fun watch. I'm really not excited to watch this fight. I don't think Gabriel Bonfim beats anyone else in the top 10, so I hate it. But Stephen Thomspon's probably going to get KO'd in the first round. Sad. I think 2 years ago he flatlines Gabriel Bonfim under 3 rounds, so... Moving on to the main event of this fight. Sorry to get so grim there just because I'm talking about Stephen Thomspon, one of my favorites, but we've got Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Teixeira. I've actually thought quite long and hard, and I'm going to have to take Derrick Lewis on this one. I genuinely wanted to pick Tallison Teixeira, as he's more technical, he's got the deeper tool bag out of the two. But then again, every single fighter that Derrick Lewis has ever fought has a deeper tool bag than him. And if you think about Derrick Lewis's losses, they're usually grapplers, or people with like a very similar style to him. And I think that I think grapplers find Derrick very easy to take down, and that seems to be easily the best way to take him to beat him. And Tallison is in no way a grappler. He's actually quite a bad grappler. So I think historically Derrick Lewis does very well against the taller opponents like Alexander Volkov, and he's got a lot of hot power on his overhand, which is a lot easier to clip the taller opponent with. And although Tallison Teixeira has a lot of power, he gets hit a lot. And when Tallison's standing up there, he stands really tall. And if Derrick hits him in that position, it's just going to fold Tallison Teixeira over. We saw Teixeira come out very fast last time out and KO Justin Tafa very easily by just rushing him. But I think Derrick Lewis is a lot better than Justin Tafa. I think Tafa is not the most attacking guy. He kind of just catches you randomly, whereas Derrick Lewis can actually grit down and throw some big punches. I think how this fight plays out is that Teixeira will win the first round. He will be leg kicking him at range, keeping Derrick Lewis at bay. Derrick will throw like 5 punches, 1 punch per minute. They'll all creep a little closer every minute that he throws them. And round 2 will start. Tallison will start the round very, very fast. Probably beat him up with kicks for a little bit. And then I think Derrick Lewis is just going to get sick of it and then start laying heat on and then just get a KO in the second round. I think the first overhand that he lands on Tallison, it will knock him clean out. I don't think Tallison's taken the sort of power that Derrick Lewis has. And straight after the Tafa fight, after watching how upright Tallison Teixeira stands, I was like, I pray that they slowly build this guy up. He's 25 years old. We can't have his chin cleaned off by Derrick Lewis at this point in his career. But I really think he will get knocked out. But again, it's a heavyweight. Anything can happen. We could see Tallison Teixeira go out and knock Derrick Lewis out in seconds. So this is really not a fight that you can go in and do a really in-depth breakdown on, because style-wise, Derrick Lewis should lose to everyone, but he wins sometimes. So I'm going to pick Derrick Lewis by a second round KO. Let me know what you think of my predictions. Do you reckon I did well at all? What do you think of the Stephen Thomspon fight, especially just because he's one of my favorites? And as always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.